Hey, what's happening? Happy Tuesday to everybody. It's Daryl here. It's bright and freaking early, man. It's 3 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. Okay, yesterday afternoon, I was going through the channels and I came across, I think it was like Story TV. I came across a special, it was about American skyscrapers. And they were talking about different skyscrapers: Chicago, Sears Tower, New York City, Empire State Building, and it got me start thinking, because where I live in Connecticut, where I grew up here in Connecticut, I'm only about 1 hour, a little over 1 hour away from downtown Manhattan. I grew up in a very small bedroom community, suburban, middle, upper class Connecticut town, probably about 20,000 people. And I live right next to, or within an hour's drive, to the biggest city in the world. And I have some unique, it got me thinking, and I have some unique stories, especially growing up. Some of the first times I went to New York City, some of the first time I went on a school trip to New York City, we went to the UN, specifically. I think it was in sixth grade. I was probably in sixth grade. I was maybe 12, I think 12 years old. And I want to give you guys some stories. And then we went back, back when I was a freshman in high school. We started skipping school, and we would take we would take a bus down to the nearest city here, Waterbury, Connecticut, and then we would take a Greyhound down to Port Authority at 15 years old. And our parents had no idea that we spent a day roaming around the biggest city in the world, specifically in Times Square, or 42nd Street, at 15 years old, back in the late 70s, early 80s. And I got to share some stories with you, because I got some crazy stories. 15-year-old kid in Times Square back then. All right. Let me describe a few things to you. Like, when we went down on the bus, one of the most amazing things was the feeling of, being, most people are from smaller towns, being in a box. Like, when we get down there, you're in these canyons. And I can't, if you've never been next to some of these huge, skyscrapers that are 50, 60, 80 stories tall, it's just unbelievable. And I remember one of the first things I did at like 12 years old is I went up to the building. I got as close to the building as I could, and I put my face right up against it. And I wanted to look up the side of the building, and of course, it almost looks like the building's going out over you. I wanted to stand right next to to a skyscraper and then look up at it. I don't know. That was like one time when I went to the ocean. I specifically want. It's nice because I live near the ocean here too, and the idea that you could not see land, like if you look out at the ocean here, England is the next piece of land, or Italy or France, from the shore here. And it really freaked me out, the idea that I could go to the shore and then I look out and you can't see land. It's just water that goes on forever. Being a kid, these ideas amaze me. Let me tell you this. Like, I remember going down in 12th grade, and they warned us, all of us like 12, 13-year-old kids. We were going down in like three big Greyhound buses. And they warned us, because going down, we took 95. We took Route 8 down to 95 along the Connecticut coastline, and then 95 down into Manhattan. And usually you have to, you pass through Harlem on the way from Connecticut coming down, and then you turn to going down the island of Manhattan, and you have to go, more or less, you have to go through Harlem. And they warned us specifically, it was almost like, I mean, I hate to say this, but the teachers talked about it a lot. You're going to see a ghetto. You're going to see one of the biggest ghettos in the world, one of the biggest, inner cities in the world, with the graffiti and this, like I said, this is the late 70s, early 80s, and Manhattan was a different beast back then. It wasn't all prettied up and Mickey Mouse and Starbucks and all that stuff. It was all adult bookstores and movie theaters, and that, I mean, just one after the other, just for blocks. That's all there was. But they warned us not to stare. And when we went through Harlem, they said other buses had been attacked and they'd thrown rocks at the buses. They warned us, don't stare too much, don't make eye contact, and whatever you do, don't flip off the people. You know, and I mean, I hate to say this, but a bunch of white kids basically going down into the city. It was almost like we were. I mean, it was a terrible way. It was a terrible way to look at it. It really was. It was like we were going into the. I mean, I don't even want to say it. You know, we were going to the jungle. You know, we couldn't make eye contact with the inhabitants or anything like that. That's that's really what it felt like looking back, and it was a messed up way to introduce kids to different cultures. It really was. I got to share this with you guys. Okay, well, on that trip to the UN, I can't remember where we were going, but it was a rainy, cold day. It was probably about in November sometime, and it was early morning. It was probably about 9 or 10 in the morning. You know, we were going from one building to another building, probably somewhere in the downtown Manhattan. And there were homeless people, and I had never seen a homeless person before at 12 years old coming from Connecticut. And we're walking down the sidewalk, and there's a big piece of plastic right, the sidewalks are huge down there. You know, they're, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 feet wide in a lot of places. Sometimes they're not, but, on the main, 7th Avenue, 8th Avenue, the sidewalks are huge in some places. And in the middle of the sidewalk, there's a big piece of plastic, and I see people, it's everybody's rushing to and from work and break time and coming up to lunch hour, and there's people going back and forth. It's a busy Manhattan sidewalk. And people are almost stepping over this bag. I'm wondering, what is this? Is it a piece of garbage? Why doesn't somebody pick that up and move it? Because people are all kind of like walking around this piece of plastic on the sidewalk, just right in the middle of the sidewalk. And I get right next to it, and I realize that it's a human being underneath the plastic bag. Swear to God. It was a homeless person, and he was laying on the sidewalk with a piece of plastic over him. I don't know if he was sleeping. I don't know if he was unconscious. I don't know. But that's a sight. That's the feeling, my memory of that. I will never forget. I was terrified. And I think one of the things that terrified me was I thought, how did this guy get to this place, where people are just ignoring him, and it's a cold, rainy day, and he's laying on a sidewalk, a dirty sidewalk, and people are just ignoring him. Nobody's asking him if he needs help. Nobody cares. People are just stepping over it. And I'm terrified. I really was. And I thought to myself, please, God, don't let me ever get to this place. I mean, it just scared the freaking hell out of me. It terrified me. And it terrified me the way that people just walked over him like he didn't even exist. That's one of the things I saw on that trip that day to the UN. All right, let's skip forward a little bit. Like I said, when I was a freshman, me and my friend Mike, we'll call him Michael. This guy Mike right now, he's a born again preacher. He's an evangelist preacher. I swear to God, he's got 5 kids. This is the guy I've told you in other videos. We tripped one time, and he had this weird trip where he got out of the car and ran into the woods for hours, and we couldn't find him. And when he came back, he was born again. I swear to God. And he's now a preacher. I think last I knew, he was trying to buy an actual church where he could have a congregation here in Connecticut, and he had like 5 kids, and he took this trip one time and he changed. Okay, so I was with him this day. We were both 15 years old. He was my best friend at the time, and I had already lost my virginity. I told you guys about this. It wasn't a good story. The guy that was dating my mother set something up, and then he watched. That's a whole other video. And my friends knew all about this. I was 14 and the lady was 36. And my mom's boyfriend set it up and watched while I lost my cherry. That's a whole other story. But my friends thought I was the greatest, that I was, the big man, that I had lost I popped my cherry, and they wanted to lose theirs. So me and Michael went down to New York City, and we had seen these adult bookstores where they actually had ladies of the evening working in businesses there. You could, you would go into this building, and there were these big, huge black dudes, bouncers at the doors. You'd go up. It almost looked like an old doctor's office. And you'd go in, and you'd get up to this like reception area, and they'd have like the sliding windows. And looking through those windows, there'd be another room you could look into. and there'd be about 20 seats against the wall with all different women sitting in seats, you know, ladies of the evening, white, black, Asian, whatever. We're 15 years old. And you get a ticket to get into this building. I believe it was $20, you know, so like, wow, that's great. You know, $20, we get it, you know, we get to pick a girl, and, you know, and my friend was all excited. I got a ticket too. I knew though, you know, I was pretty street savvy, the stuff that had already happened to me at that age. And I knew there had to be a catch to this, and there was. So I pick a girl, me, little 15-year-old Daryl, and Michael, my friend, picks these were grown women in their 30s probably. We each pick one. I go in a room with mine, he goes in a room with his, right? So I'm in the room with her, and she goes, I don't know. She just gets right to it. She goes, I don't know what you thought you were going to get for $20, but that was just to get in the building. She says, everything is going to be extra from, you know, anything you want is extra. And if you don't got the money, get the hell out. Basically is what she said. And she said, you know, Leroy will show you the way out. And it was like $20, $30 up to $120. And I was like, no. I was like, no. And so she said, Leroy, you know, this guy don't got no money. He doesn't want to, you know, he's not going for it. So he came and got me. And he goes, Leroy goes, you're not going to give me any problems, are you? And I said, no, I just considered it a loss. You know, I was a 15-year-old kid. I'm not going to fight this big guy or anything. You know, my $20 is gone, so be it. It's a lesson learned. Michael comes running out of the room, my best friend, and he's like, dude, let me borrow some money. Please let me borrow some money. Because, you know, he was going to go for it, and he needed more money. I gave him money. I sat down on the sidewalk and waited for him to come out. This is what happened while I was waiting on the sidewalk. A fancy car like an LTD pulled up, or a Cadillac, and it had this old guy in it. You know, this old guy with a suit on, looked like a doctor or something. And he's looking at me, and he's giving me these googly eyes. It's like, ooh, you know. And he thought I was working the street at that age. And he starts waving a $50, I don't know if it was a 50 or 100. He's waving. He's like, come here. And he's trying to get, you know, this was on 42nd Street, and he was trying to buy me. I passed. I waited. My friend came down. My friend was very disappointed. He was like, it was a whole different person, you know. He was full of guilt, and you know, he's like, Daryl, it was terrible. She just went down. She spit it out, and it was very cold. And you know, this was his big first time, you know, and it was, well, the first time getting taken care of. And he was just the guilt, you know. He barely talked the rest of the day. That's one of the things that happened. Yeah, that's one of the trips. This is what happens when you live back in the 70s. I think it was 1980. Living next to the biggest city in the world, New York City, the Big Apple, and you're from a little town about an hour away from Connecticut. These are some of the stories. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll be back later with another video. You guys have a good Tuesday.